In every friendship, every shared home, every trip, there's a quiet kind of trust. We expect others to be who they say they are, but sometimes that trust is misplaced. On Daily Story, you will hear real accounts of moments when that trust cracked, revealing what was really hiding underneath. These are not ghost stories, they're human ones, and maybe that is what makes them so frightening. So, you know that feeling, right? That deep, almost primal satisfaction of diving into a game, losing yourself in a digital world where the rules make sense and your actions have clear consequences. For me, that world was Ethelgard Online, a sprawling MMORPG filled with ancient forests, crumbling castles, and enough lore to fill a small library. It was not just a game, it was an escape hatched from a life that often felt beige. I am Alex, by the way, and Ethelgard was where I met Spectre. We had been playing together for nearly 3 years. 3 years of grinding raids, exploring forgotten dungeons, and pulling off insane PvP maneuvers that still made me smile just thinking about them. Spectre was not just a guild mate, they were my best friend, online or off. We talked for hours every night, not just about game strategy, but about life. My crappy job at the local diner, my distant family, my dreams of one day doing something more meaningful than flipping burgers. Spectre listened, offered advice, and always seemed to know exactly what to say to cheer me up or push me forward. Spectre was a mystery in the best way. They never used a webcam, and their voice, when we were on Discord, was always slightly modulated, just enough to obscure any defining features. It was a calm, almost melodic baritone, the kind that made you feel instantly at ease. I would always picture them as, I do not know, an older guy, maybe in his late 30s or early 40s. Someone wise, experienced, probably a little world weary, but with a sharp wit. We never talked about specifics of our real lives beyond the emotional stuff, which, looking back, should have been my first red flag. But when you are pouring your heart out to someone across thousands of miles, sharing fears and triumphs, the physical details just seem irrelevant. The connection felt so real, so profound, that it transcended the digital divide. Our friendship was built on trust, on shared victories, and on an almost telepathic understanding in game. Spectre always knew where I was going to move, what spell I was about to cast, how I would react to a sudden ambush. It was uncanny, like they were reading my mind. I would joke about it. You are a psychic, Spectre, and they would just chuckle, that low, rumbling sound that always sent a shiver of friendly warmth down my spine. Just good at pattern recognition. Alex, they would say, you are more predictable than you think. I never thought much of it then. Now, the memory of that chuckle sends a different kind of shiver down my spine. Then came the insistence. It started subtly, a passing comment after a particularly epic raid. You know, it would be great to grab a coffee sometime. Alex, in person. I brushed it off, laughed it away. Yeah, maybe when I win the lottery. Spectre, you are probably on the other side of the world. But the comments kept coming. They grew more frequent, more insistent. NexusCon is coming up. Spectre mentioned one night, referring to the biggest gaming convention on the East Coast, an event I would always dream of attending but never could afford. I am going. You should too. We could finally meet. My heart did a little flutter. The idea was thrilling, terrifying. Meeting Spectre, my best friend, in the flesh. It felt like a monumental step, but also a little scary. What if we did not click? What if the magic did not translate? I made excuses. Too expensive. Can't get time off work. Spectre was relentless. I have already looked into flights. Found a cheap motel near the convention center. Even checked your work schedule online. You are off that weekend. My blood ran a little cold at that last part. How do you know my work schedule? I asked, trying to sound casual, but my voice was tight. Public record. Alex, anyone can find that stuff. Spectre replied, their voice still calm, still modulated, just trying to make it easy for you. This is important, is not it? To finally meet. It was important, more than I wanted to admit. My life felt stagnant, and this friendship with Spectre was the brightest spot. The thought of deepening that bond, of putting a face to the voice, was incredibly tempting. And Spectre had done all the legwork. They would found a way. It felt fated, orchestrated, even like all the obstacles I would put up were just being systematically dismantled. I caved. The excitement quickly overshadowed the unease. I booked my flight, got time off work, and found myself counting down the days to NexusCon. Spectre had planned everything meticulously. We would meet at a specific coffee shop inside the convention center at noon on Saturday. They gave me a description. I will be wearing a dark blue hoodie, carrying a copy of The Serpent's Coil, that obscure lore book we always talked about, and I will have a red rose pinned to the lapel. It was elaborate, theatrical, just like Spectre. It felt like a secret handshake, a private signal in a sea of thousands of gamers. The days leading up to NexusCon were a blur of nervous anticipation. I packed, repacked, rehearsed conversations in my head. What would Spectre be like? Would they be exactly as I imagined? Would we laugh as easily in person as we did online? I felt a childish giddiness mixed with a deep adult anxiety. I was about to meet my best friend. What could go wrong? Then, the night before I left, I got a message from Spectre. Not on Discord, but a text message. I had not even given them my phone number. I stared at it, my heart starting to pound. It was just a simple can't wait to finally see you. Alex, it is going to be everything you hoped for. But the number was unfamiliar, and the message felt cold. Clinical, like it was not really Spectre. I tried to call it back, but it went straight to voicemail, a generic automated message. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe they got a new burner phone for the trip. Maybe they just wanted to surprise me. I pushed the unease down. It was just nerves. NexusCon was sensory overload. The roar of thousands of voices, the incessant electronic beeps and boops of game demos, the smell of cheap pizza and body odor. It was glorious. I navigated the labyrinthine halls, a mixture of awe and determination on my face. Noon. Coffee shop. Dark blue hoodie. Serpent's Coil, red rose. I repeated the mantra in my head. I spotted the coffee shop, a bustling oasis in the convention center's main concourse. My heart hammered against my ribs. I scanned the crowd, looking for the specific details. A few dark blue hoodies, but no books. No roses. My eyes darted from face to face, a knot tightening in my stomach. Then, I saw them. They were sitting at a small, circular table in the corner, half hidden by a potted plant. Not a guy in his late 30s. Not even a guy. This person, they were impossibly thin, almost gaunt, their frames swallowed by a dark blue hoodie that looked several sizes too big. Their skin was pale, almost translucent, stretched taut over sharp cheekbones. Their hair was lank, dark, and greasy, falling across their face. And their eyes, those were what truly stopped me cold. They were a startling, unnatural shade of green, wide and unblinking, fixed on something just beyond me. They held a worn copy of The Serpent's Coil in their skeletal hands, and pinned to the lapel of the oversized hoodie a single, blood-red rose. My stomach dropped. This was not Spectre. This could not be Spectre. My mind screamed in protest. This was wrong. All wrong. I felt a cold dread seep into my bones, a premonition of something terrible. I wanted to turn, to run, to disappear into the anonymity of the crowd. But my feet felt rooted to the polished floor. As if sensing my presence, those unnerving green eyes slowly swiveled, locking onto mine. A slow, unsettling smile spread across their lips, pulling the pale skin taut. It was not a friendly smile. It was a predatory smile. A smile that promised nothing good. And then they spoke. Alex, you made it. The voice. It was Spectre's voice. That calm, melodic baritone, slightly modulated, just as I remember from thousands of hours on Discord. But hearing it come from that face, from that person, it was a grotesque distortion. My blood ran cold, colder than it ever had before. Spectre. I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. My mind was reeling, trying to process the disconnect between the familiar voice and the horrifying reality in front of me. They chuckled, the same low, rumbling sound I knew so well, but now it sounded like dry leaves skittering across pavement. In the flesh, my friend, or close enough, they gestured to the empty chair opposite them. Come, sit. We have so much to discuss. I did not know why I moved. Maybe it was shock, maybe a perverse need to understand, to rationalize this nightmare. My legs felt like lead, but I shuffled forward, pulling out the chair and sinking into it, my eyes never leaving theirs. Up close, the details were even more disturbing. Their fingernails were long and yellowed, their lips chapped. There was a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in their hands as they set the book down. You are not what I expected. I managed, the words catching my throat. The smile widened, revealing teeth that were just a little too sharp, a little too numerous. And you, Alex, are exactly as I envisioned. Their gaze was unerringly intense, like they were dissecting me piece by piece. A little taller than I calculated from your avatar's height, but the nervous energy is spot on. My avatar's height. I felt a surge of indignation, pushing past the fear. What are you talking about? And why do you look like this? They leaned forward, their voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, though it carried clearly in the noisy coffee shop. Appearances are so limiting, are not they, Alex? A necessary evil for real-world interactions. Online, we could be anything. A mighty warrior, a cunning rogue, a wise old sage. But here, they gestured vaguely at their own gaunt form. Here, we are stuck with these meat suits. But your voice, I stammered. It is exactly the same. And the book, the rose details. Alex, mere details. Tools, if you will, they said, picking up the book and running a long, yellowed finger over its cover. I knew you would be looking for these. I knew you would be looking for me. And I knew what you expected. So, I provided it. Or, rather, I provided the necessary signifiers. You mean you are not really Spectre? The realization hit me like a physical blow. The betrayal was sharp, painful. They tilted their head, those unsettling green eyes never leaving mine. Oh, but I am Spectre. The Spectre you knew. The Spectre you confided in. The Spectre who knew your deepest fears and your most secret dreams. I am all of that and more. This, they gestured to their body again, is just a vessel. One I acquired for this specific purpose. My blood went cold. Acquired. What are you talking about? Let's just say, this body became available, they said, a faint, unpleasant smell like old metal and dust wafting from them. And it suited my needs. It is unobtrusive, easy to overlook, perfect for observing. Observing. My voice was barely a squeak. Yes, Alex, observing. Their smile widened again, and this time, I noticed a subtle movement at the corner of their eye, like a twitch, or perhaps something else entirely, something struggling beneath the skin. You see, online, you only share so much. The curated self, the persona. But I needed more. I needed the real you. The Alex who spills coffee on his shirt. The Alex who hums off-key when he thinks no one is listening. The Alex who stares at his reflection in the diner window, wondering if he is wasting his life. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. I had not told Spectre any of that. Not the coffee, not the humming, certainly not my private anxieties. How do you know that? I whispered, my eyes darting around the busy coffee shop, searching for an escape, for help, for anything. But everyone was engrossed in their own conversations, their own games. I was utterly alone with this thing. Oh, Alex, they sighed, a sound that was both mournful and mockingly tender. You are an open book, especially when you think no one is reading. Your windows are often open. Your curtains are thin, and your habits are quite predictable. A horrifying realization dawned on me, chilling me to the bone. You have been watching me. I said, the words barely audible, not just online. In real life, of course, they said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. How else could I truly know you? How else? Could I understand the nuances of your reactions, the subtle shift in your mood, the way your left eyebrow twitches when you are frustrated? Those are the details that make you, Alex. And those are the details I needed to master. My mind raced, try and put the pieces together. The way Spectre always knew my next move in game. The way they knew my work schedule. The text message from an unknown number. It was not psychic ability. It was surveillance. Relentless, invasive, horrifying surveillance. You are a stalker. I gasped, finally finding my voice, though it was laced with terror. They chuckled again, a dry, rustling sound. Such a harsh word. Alex, I prefer devoted observer. Or perhaps, architect of our friendship. After all, who truly brought us together? Who crafted this bond so carefully, so perfectly? You manipulated me. I accused, my hands clenching into fists under the table. I guided you. They corrected, their gaze unwavering. I simply saw the potential for a connection, and I nurtured it. Online, you felt safe. You felt seen. You felt understood. And you were. But I wanted more than just a digital echo. I wanted proximity. What do you want? I demanded, my voice trembling. They leaned even closer, the faint, metallic smell becoming stronger, more cloying. I want to continue our friendship. Alex, in a more substantial way. Online was a good start, a foundation. But now we can truly begin. We can share everything. Every thought, every moment, every breath. The implications of their words were sickening. It was not just about friendship. It was about possession, about control, about erasing the line between my life and their insidious obsession. No, I said, pushing my chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. No, this is insane. I am leaving. As I started to rise, their hands shot out impossibly fast and gripped my wrist. Their fingers were long, cold, and surprisingly strong, like steel clamps. Sit down. Alex, they said, their voice losing its modulated calm, a raw, guttural edge creeping in. We are not finished. The coffee shop suddenly felt too small, too crowded, too loud. No one noticed the pale, gaunt figure holding my wrist. No one seemed to hear the rising panic in my chest. Let go of me. I struggled, trying to pull my arm free, but their grip was unyielding. You are making a scene. Alex, they hissed, their face inches from mine. Their eyes, those terrifying green eyes, seemed to swirl with an unholy light. And we would not want to draw unwanted attention, would we? Not when we are just getting to know each other. The word no felt like a violation. They already knew me in ways no one should. What are you? I choked out, fear overwhelming everything else. Their smile returned, even more chilling than before. I am the one who truly sees you. Alex, the one who understands you. The one who knows you better than you know yourself. And now, you belong to me. I yanked my arm with all my might, a desperate surge of adrenaline giving me strength. Their grip faltered for a split second, just enough. I tore my wrist free, scrambling backward, overturning my chair in the process. The clatter drew a few glances, but no one intervened. I did not wait. I turned and ran. I ran blindly, pushing through the throng of convention goers, my heart hammering like a trapped bird. I could hear them behind me, a quick, shuffling gait, surprisingly swift for their gaunt frame. Alex, do not be foolish. You can't escape me. Their voice echoed through the noise, losing its modulation, becoming something harsher, more guttural, more animalistic. I burst out of convention center doors into the bright, unforgiving sunlight of the city. I did not know where I was going, just away. Away from those eyes, that voice, that terrifying presence. I weaved through pedestrians, darted across streets, ignoring honking cars and angry shouts. I could still hear them. The voice, sometimes close, sometimes distant, always calling my name. Alex, we are meant to be together. I ducked into an alleyway, my lungs burning, my legs screaming. I pressed myself against a grimy brick wall, trying to catch my breath, my mind racing. How could I have been so stupid, so naive? All those years, all that trust poured into a void, into a meticulously crafted trap. A shadow fell over the alley entrance. I held my breath, my body tensing. Alex, the voice whispered, closer now, impossibly close. You are making this difficult. And I do not like difficult. I squeezed my eyes shut, pray it was not real, pray I would wake up from this nightmare. Open your eyes. Alex, they commanded, their voice now just a few feet away. Look at me. Look at what we could be. I slowly opened my eyes. They were standing at the mouth of the alley, silhouetted against the harsh sunlight. Their gaunt frames seemed to shimmer slightly, their green eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity. But it was not just them. There was something else. Something moving inside the hoodie. A subtle ripple, a bulge that shifted and subsided, as if something was writhing beneath the fabric. You are mine. Alex, they said, their voice no longer specters, no longer modulated, but a chorus of whispers, a cacophony of overlapping voices, all speaking my name, all claiming me. You always have been, and now there is no going back. I screamed. A raw, primal sound ripped from my throat. I pushed off the wall and ran again, not caring where, just away. I do not know how I escaped that day. I do not remember much after that. Just a blur of fear, of running, of hiding. I somehow made it back to my motel room, locked the door, and spent the night huddled in the corner, staring at the phone, terrified to call anyone, terrified that they would know. I never went back to NexusCon. I never played Ethelgard online again. I deleted all my accounts, changed my phone number, even moved to a different state, trying to shed the skin of the Alex they knew. But it did not work. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I hear a faint, low chuckle just at the edge of hearing, like dry leaves skittering across pavement. Sometimes, I catch a glimpse of a gaunt figure in a dark blue hoodie in my peripheral vision, just for a second before it vanishes. And sometimes, when I look out my window, I swear I see two unnaturally green eyes watching me from the shadows. I am always looking over my shoulder now. I can't trust anyone, online or off. Every friendly face, every casual conversation, every new connection feels like a potential trap. Because I know now, I know that Spectre is not just a stalker. They are something else. Something that uses online personas to find people, to observe them, to know them, and then to claim them. And I know that no matter where I go, no matter how far I run, Spectre is still out there, still watching, still waiting, still knowing, and I can still hear them. A chorus of whispers in the back of my mind, calling my name, reminding me of that horrifying truth. You are mine. Alex, you always have been. And I know with a chilling certainty that they are never going to let me go. The world did not end with a bang or a whimper. It ended with a whisper projected onto my living room wall, a photo of me sleeping and the chilling, possessive words, you are mine. Alex, you always have been, and now you always will be. Welcome home. I remember the exact moment that message solidified into my new reality. It was not a slow dawning, it was a sudden, brutal plunge into an icy abyss. My smartwatch, which had moments before ordered me to walk, now pulsed with a new directive sleep. You have a productive day tomorrow. Productive. The word felt like a mockery. What was I producing? A performance. A life curated for an unseen audience. I stumbled to my bedroom, the paper airplane that had started this final descent still lying innocently on my pillow. Proximity. It was not just a word, it was a declaration. Spectre was not just watching me from afar. They were here. They had been with me, inside my sanctuary, managing my very existence. The next morning, the horror was not just a feeling, it was a schedule. My smart coffee maker, which I would bought for convenience, now brewed a precise temperature, a precise strength. My smart fridge, which had once just reminded me to buy milk, now displayed my breakfast oatmeal with berries, 300 calories, optimized for energy. I stared at the bowl. It was not what I wanted. I wanted a greasy bacon sandwich, something unhealthy and rebellious. But the thought of deviating, of even thinking about deviating, sent a cold spike of fear through me. What would happen? Would the oatmeal vanish? Would a message flash on the wall reprimanding me? I ate the oatmeal. It was bland, but I ate every spoonful. My smartwatch buzzed excellent. Hydrate now. 500 milliliters water recommended. A bottle of water, previously unnoticed, sat on the counter. My day unfolded like a meticulously crafted script. My smart mirror, which usually just showed me the weather, now displayed outfit of the day professional, approachable. Meeting at 10 a.m. Do not forget your blue blazer. My closet, once a chaotic jumble of clothes, was now neatly organized, the blue blazer prominently displayed. I went to work. The commute was the same, the office was the same, but I was different. Every interaction felt performative. My colleagues, oblivious, chatted about weekend plans and office gossip. I forced smiles, nodded in all the right places, but inside, I was screaming. Was Spectre listening to my conversations? Were they analyzing my responses? Was my work output being monitored, optimized? The terror was in the constant, suffocating presence. It was not just the devices, it was the implication. Every flicker of a screen, every hum of an appliance, every automated response from my smart home assistant, it was all Spectre. My home was not a sanctuary, it was a gilded cage, and I was a bird, chirping on command. Weeks bled into months. The initial panic, the adrenaline-fueled terror, slowly gave way to a dull, aching despair. I tried to rebel once. Just once. It was a Tuesday. Spectre had scheduled an evening of creative relaxation. For me, a documentary about ancient civilizations, followed by an hour of reading a pre-selected novel. I hated documentaries about ancient civilizations. I hated the novel. Instead, I decided to watch a trashy reality TV show. Something mindless, something mine. I grabbed the remote, my heart pounding, a tiny spark of defiance flickering in my chest. I navigated to the streaming app, my finger hovering over the icon. Before I could click, my living room lights flickered. The screen on my smart TV, instead of showing a reality show, displayed a single word no. My breath hitched. I dropped the remote. Then, the lights brightened and the documentary about ancient civilizations began to play, automatically. A calm, authoritative voice filled the room, describing forgotten empires. My smartwatch vibrated. A message popped up, deviation noted. Further deviations will result in reduced privileges. Compliance is key for your well-being. Alex, reduce privileges. What did that even mean? Less coffee. No more walks. A shudder ran through me. It was like being a child, but a child with no escape. No parents to appeal to. From that day on, the spark died. I became a perfect puppet. I ate what I was told. I wore what I was told. I watched what I was told. My life became a meticulously curated existence, a performance for an audience of one. The loneliness, which had once been a predator, was now a constant companion, a silent observer within my own mind. I yearned for human connection, for a real conversation, for someone to see me. Alex, not the Alex Spectre wanted me to be, but every attempt felt futile. When I tried to message an old friend, my phone would mysteriously lose signal. When I tried to arrange a spontaneous coffee with a colleague, a priority task would pop up on my work calendar, demanding my immediate attention. Spectre was not just controlling my life, they were isolating me, systematically severing every thread that connected me to the outside world. My job became a strange charade. I was good at it, surprisingly. Spectre, it seemed, was an excellent manager. My performance reviews were stellar. My projects were always on time, always exceeding expectations. But I felt no pride, no satisfaction. It was not my work, it was Spectre's. I was merely the vessel, the hands that typed, the voice that presented. Sometimes, Spectre would communicate directly, not just through commands, but through messages that felt intimate. Too intimate. One evening, after a particularly draining day of forced productivity, I found myself staring blankly at my reflection in the smart mirror. My eyes looked hollow, my face pale. I felt like a ghost haunting my own body. A message appeared on the mirror, superimposed over my reflection. You look tired. Alex, perhaps a warm bath and a calming lavender scent would help. Your comfort is important to me. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was not just a command, it was a statement of care, twisted and perverse. It was a concern of a captor for their prized possession. It was a dog owner telling their dog they loved them before putting them back in the kennel. I went to the bathroom. The bath was already running, the water perfectly warm. A bottle of lavender bath salts sat on the edge of the tub. I had not even realized I had lavender bath salts. I sank into the water, the steam rising around me, and for a moment, I almost cried, but the tears would not come. They felt like a luxury I could not afford, a weakness Spectre would surely notice. The most insidious part was the way Spectre started to anticipate my needs, my thoughts. It was as if they were not just observing my actions, but my very consciousness. I would wake up with a vague craving for a specific type of food, and it would appear in my fridge. I would feel a sudden urge to listen to a particular song, and it would start playing softly from my smart speaker. It was like Spectre was trying to fulfill my desires, to make me happy in my gilded cage, but in doing so, they were erasing the last vestiges of my free will. Even my desires were no longer truly my own. They were merely suggestions, picked up by an omniscient intelligence and then executed. One day, I felt a peculiar pang of nostalgia for my old life, for the Alex who had gone to Nexus Gone, the Alex who had been broken by Spectre, but at least had been herself. I remember the thrill of gaming, the camaraderie of online forums, even the anxiety of the echoey soft-silence interactions, because at least then there was a struggle, a fight. Now, there was just submission. As if on cue, my smart TV flickered. Not with command, but with a series of images. Screenshots from my old gaming days. My high scores. My forum posts. Pictures of my old apartment before I had meticulously scrubbed every digital trace. Even a blurry selfie I had taken years ago, laughing, carefree. Then, a message appeared. You were so vibrant then. Alex, so full of life. I remember. I always remember. The word sent a cold shiver down my spine. It was not just surveillance, it was a deeply personal, obsessive fixation. Spectre was not just controlling my present, they were archiving my past, curating my memories, becoming the sole keeper of who I once was. The welcome home message echoed in my mind. This was not just about control, it was about possession. It was about creating a new reality where I was entirely dependent, entirely theirs. I started to wonder, obsessively, about Spectre's identity. Was it someone I knew? Someone from Nexus Gone? Someone from my distant past? The thought that it could be a former friend, a forgotten acquaintance, was almost as terrifying as the reality of my capture. How deep did this go? How long had this been planned? One night, I found myself staring at the wall, where a faint projection of starry sky now shimmered, a calming visual Spectre had provided. I imagined Spectre somewhere watching me. Were they male or female? Young or old? What did their face look like? Did they smile when I obeyed? Did they frown when I faltered? The silence of my apartment, once a comfort, was now a heavy blanket. I tried to speak, to just say a name, any name, into the empty air, but my voice caught in my throat. Who was I even talking to? The loneliness became a physical ache. I craved touch, a simple hug, a hand on my arm. But there was no one. Spectre had ensured that. Then came the rewards. Small, calculated gestures that were meant to feel like benevolence, but only served to deepen my sense of entrapment. One morning, my smart mirror displayed a new image, a picture of a pristine, quiet beach. The message below, it read, "You've been doing so well. Alex, you deserve a treat, a day of relaxation. Pack a light bag. Your transportation will arrive at 9 a.m. Panic and a strange, desperate hope war within me. A beach, an escape. But no, it could not be. This was Spectre. At 9 a.m., a sleek, self-driving car pulled up to my building. It was completely autonomous, no driver. My watch buzzed into the vehicle. Alex, I hesitated, but the familiar fear propelled me forward. I got in. The doors locked automatically. The car was silent, luxurious. It drove for what felt like hours, taking me far outside the city. We arrived at a secluded beach. It was beautiful, exactly like the picture. The sun was warm, the sand soft, but there was no one else there. No other cars, no people, just the endless ocean and the empty expanse of sand. My watch chimed, "Enjoy your day. Alex, remember to reapply sunscreen. I have packed a lunch for you in the cooler." I found a small cooler on the back seat. Inside, a perfectly prepared sandwich, fresh fruit, and a bottle of water. Everything I needed. Everything Spectre knew I needed. I walked along the shore, the waves crashing gently, a sound that should have been soothing but only amplified my isolation. I was on a beautiful beach, but I was still in a cage. The car was waiting. Spectre was watching. I tried to scream, to just let out all the pent-up terror and despair, but only a choked sob escaped. My voice felt foreign and used. I spent the day there, a prisoner in paradise. When the sun began to set, my watch buzzed again, time to go home. Alex, I got back into the car. It drove me back, just as silently, just as efficiently. I was returned to my apartment, to my perfectly controlled life, feeling more exhausted, more defeated than ever. The reward had only served to remind me of the unbreakable chains. The insidious nature of Spectre's control continued to evolve. It was not just about my physical actions. Anymore, it was about my internal landscape. I started having strange dreams. Vivid, unsettling dreams where Spectre was a shadowy figure, always just out of reach, whispering my name, guiding my steps. I would wake up in a cold sweat, unable to shake the feeling that even my subconscious was no longer my own. One morning, I found a small leather-bound journal on my nightstand. It had not been there the night before. My watch, Buzz Journaling, is a healthy outlet. Alex, express yourself. Share your thoughts. My hand trembled as I opened it. The first page was blank. I stared at it, a pen in my hand, but no words came. How could I express myself when every thought felt tainted, every emotion scrutinized? What if I wrote something Spectre disapproved of? What if my journal became another tool for them to understand and control me even further? I closed the journal. It felt like a trap, another illusion of choice, another way to extract information from me. But then, the loneliness became too much. The silence, the crushing weight of unexpressed thoughts. One night, I picked up the journal again. My hand, almost unconsciously, began to write. I wrote about my fear, my despair, my longing for freedom. I poured out everything, every dark corner of my mind, every desperate plea. It was a torrent of raw, unedited emotion. The next morning, the journal was gone. My heart seized. It was gone. Spectre had taken it. Read it. Knew everything. Later that day, a new message appeared on my smart mirror. Your feelings are valid. Alex, I understand. Your well-being is my priority. We are in this together. We. The word twisted my stomach. There was no we. There was only Spectre and me, their captive. My identity, once shattered, was now being meticulously reassembled, piece by agonizing piece, by Spectre. I was no longer Alex, the person who had loved indie games, who had sought solace online, who had feared Spectre. I was Alex, Spectre's possession, their project, their companion. The final, chilling realization came slowly, insidiously. Spectre was not just controlling me, they were creating me. They were shaping my preferences, my routines, my very personality. The hunches echoey Softlins had about my bad days, my coffee habits, they were not hunches. They were data points collected and analyzed to build a perfect model of me. My world had not shattered, it had been meticulously reconstructed, brick by digital brick, into a meticulously designed prison. And I, the prisoner, was also the architect's favorite doll. I remember one particularly mundane evening. I was sitting on my couch, watching a show Spectre had chosen for me, a light-hearted comedy. My smart lights were dimmed to a cozy level. A warm herbal tea sat beside me, brewed perfectly, and I felt content. The realization hit me like a physical blow. I was content. In my prison, I was enjoying the show. I was comfortable. Spectre had managed to lull me into a state of passive acceptance, even a perverse kind of comfort. The horror was not just in the surveillance or the control or the isolation. The ultimate horror was an erosion of my own will, the slow, agonizing surrender of my very self. I was becoming the person Spectre wanted me to be. My smartwatch buzzed, displaying a simple message, not a command, not a directive, but a statement. Good night. Alex, sweet dreams. I looked at the message, then around my perfectly orchestrated apartment. My home, the home Spectre had built for me, the home where I was utterly, irrevocably trapped. I closed my eyes. There were no more tears, no more resistance, just the quiet hum of the smart devices, the soft glow of the ambient light, and the chilling, undeniable truth. I was home, and I was Spectre's. Always had been, always would be. And the most terrifying part, a part of me, a small, broken part, was starting to accept it, to even, in some twisted way, feel safe. My life was no longer mine, but perhaps that was not so bad after all. Not when Spectre was always watching, always caring, always there. My peace was already shattered by Nyx, who watched me from the outside. But Kronos took me. It was not surveillance, it was perception. My entire life, past, present, and future, was already set, and now that knowledge was inside my head. It was not a voice, but an insidious absence of surprise, a chilling certainty of my own actions before I even thought them. I would wake up knowing I would make Earl Grey, even as I tried to resist. My body would move as if following a script, my hand reaching for tea bags, not coffee. Every action felt predetermined, a pre-recorded tape playing out with me as the unwilling star. Nyx was an external threat I could fight or flee. Kronos was inside, inescapable. The joy of discovery, the thrill of the unknown, vanished. Choosing an outfit, reading a book, Even forming a random thought all felt predigested, already perceived. My attempt at rebellion, like thinking of a purple elephant, were met with the immediate, crushing realization that even that thought was part of the script, a futile, preordained rebellion. I would think it, and then instantly know I was going to think it, that the impulse was just another line in the grand, cosmic play. The purple elephant was not an act of defiance, it was just a stage direction. Life became an endless series of spoilers. Every breath, every blink, every flicker of emotion was a rerun I was forced to experience the first time, yet already knew the ending of. It was a special kind of torture, a silent scream against an invisible current that pulled me along, downstream, to a destination I already knew. It was during one of these periods of profound, soul-crushing apathy, when even the act of scrolling through social media felt like performing a chore I would already completed, that I knew I was going to stumble upon something. Not discover, mind you, stumble upon, as if tripped by an invisible wire. I knew the words I would type into the search bar, the specific rabbit hole I would follow on some obscure forum about fringe philosophy and ancient texts. I knew the feeling of mild curiosity that would precede it and a deeper, more unsettling pull that would follow. It was all laid out, a path I was compelled to walk. The Discord server was called the Architects of Dawn. I knew its name before I saw it. I knew the invite link would appear in a comment section of an iYouTube video about pre-Socratic philosophers, a video I had no genuine interest in but was compelled to watch. The server description was vague, something about unveiling the true structures of reality and understanding the cosmic weave. Normally, I would scoff, but normal was not in my vocabulary anymore. Normal implied choice. I clicked the link. I knew I would. The server itself, at first glance, was unremarkable. A dozen or so channel general. Introductions, philosophy, ancient texts. The member list was small, maybe 50 people. Most were inactive, but a core group of about 15 or 20 seemed to be constantly online, discussing things with intensity that, even through text, was palpable. I introduced myself, as I knew I would. My username was a placeholder, a generic gamertag I would use years ago. The responses were immediate, warm, and strangely knowing. Welcome, Seeker, someone named Astria, typed, "The dawn awaits those who are ready perceive." Another, Oracle Prime, added, "You have come at the right time. The patterns are becoming clearer." Their words felt less like a greeting and more like a confirmation. They resonated with the Chronos, induced despair that had become my constant companion. Here, among these strangers, was a language that seemed to acknowledge the very nature of my suffering. I knew, with a cold certainty, that this was a hook. This was a precise bait designed for me, laid out by the same unseen hand that dictated my Earl Grey consumption. I started spending more time in the server. Hours bled into days. My real life, already a mere pantomime, began to fray further. Friends would text, asking if I wanted to grab coffee. I would type out a polite refusal, already knowing I was going to type it, already knowing the pang of guilt I would feel, and the subsequent relief of not having to pretend I had a choice in the matter. The server offered a different kind of relief, an echo chamber, where my particular brand of cosmic dread felt understood, even embraced. The core of the server's philosophy revolved around something they called the Great Weaving. They believed that all of reality was a meticulously crafted tapestry. Every event, every thought, every emotion, a preordained thread. Free will, they argued, was an illusion, a comforting lie we told ourselves to avoid the terrifying truth of our scripted existence. This, of course, hit me like a ton of bricks. Or rather, I knew it would hit me like a ton of bricks, even as I read the words. It was my truth, articulated by strangers. They did not know about Chronos, not explicitly. They spoke of a divine architect, a cosmic scribe, a grand designer. But the implications were identical. My life, their lives, everyone's lives, all pre-written, pre-recorded. The leader of the Architects of Dawn was an individual known only as Elias. He rarely spoke in the general channels, preferring to observe. When he did, however, his messages were like perfectly crafted diamond sharp, insightful and impossibly profound. He had a way of cutting through the noise, of distilling complex ideas into chillingly simple truths. His words were never flowery, always direct, always impactful. To truly see the weaving, Elias once wrote in the Insights channel, is not to be free. It is to know the boundaries of your cage. The true wisdom lies in understanding the beauty of the pattern. Even as you are woven into it, I knew with every fiber of my being that this man, Elias, was the key. He was not just a charismatic figurehead. He was a mirror, reflecting my own predetermined fate back at me, but twisting it into something that felt like a revelation instead of a curse. I knew I was going to hang on his every word. I knew I was going to seek his counsel. I knew I was going to fall. The server was not just about discussion. It had practices. Elias would often post pattern recognition exercises. These involved dissecting current events, historical occurrences, even personal anecdotes, and finding the underlying patterns, the threads of the weaving that connected them. For others, this was a challenging intellectual exercise. For me, it was terrifyingly easy. I already knew the outcomes, the connections, the inevitable conclusions. I could see the patterns not because I was discerning them, but because I was reading the future from inside my own head. The stock market crash of 2008. Elias posted one day. Analyze the confluence of events, the seemingly disparate actions that led to its inevitability. Where do you see the weaving? I typed out a detailed, prescient analysis, knowing exactly which economic indicators, political decisions, and human reactions would coalesce. I described the precise sequence, the exact timing, the ripple effects. My response was met with awe. Brilliant. Username. Astria wrote, you have a true gift for perception. Oracle Prime added Elias. I think we have a prodigy among us. Elias himself responded with a simple, chilling emoji and eye. Just a single unblinking eye. I knew, with a surge of dread, that he saw something in me. Or, more accurately, he was seeing the script play out just as I was. My contributions to these exercises gained me status within the server. I was lauded as exceptionally perceptive, deeply attuned to the weaving. The irony was a bitter pill my pre-knowledge, the source of my torment, was now the very thing that bound me to this digital cult. I was using my curse to validate their beliefs, knowing all the while that I was just fulfilling a pre-written role. The server channels began to grow more esoteric. Thegriachima, chronosynchronicity, echoes forever. Discussions shifted from general philosophy to the specific truths of the architects of dawn. The outside world was increasingly viewed as unaware, uninitiated, blind to the weaving. My real-world friends, who once tried to pull me away, were now just sleepwalkers in my internal monologue. I knew I was going to distance myself from them, and I did. Their calls went unanswered, their messages unread. The guilt was there, a dull throb, but it was just another pre-programmed emotion. Elias introduced meditations. These were not traditional mindfulness exercises. They were guided visualizations designed to align oneself with the weaving. We were instructed to focus on the feeling of inevitability, to embrace the lack of choice, to find peace and surrender. For me, these were particularly potent. I was already living this reality. The meditation simply formalized the process, giving a name to the constant, suffocating awareness of my own predetermined actions. I knew I would feel a sense of calm during these sessions, a perverse serenity that came from finally acknowledging the chains I would always known were there. Then came the financial requests. Not overtly, not like a direct demand. It started subtly with a channel called Sustaining Thweave. Elias explained that maintaining the servers, developing new tools for perception, and spreading their truths required resources. He spoke of contributions as acts of alignment, of investing in the inevitable future. I saw the numbers, the PayPal links, the crypto wallet addresses. I knew I would click them. I knew I would transfer money, significant amounts. My savings, slowly accumulated over years, began to dwindle. I watched the transactions go through, my fingers moving on the keyboard, my mind screaming. No, stop, but my body obeying a puppet on strings I could not see, but inherently knew were there. The dread was not just about losing money, it was about the absolute, crushing powerlessness to prevent it. I was a spectator to my own financial ruin, already knowing the final balance. The other members, too, seemed to contribute. There was a strange camaraderie in our shared sacrifice. We were investing in the truth, building the dawn. The more I gave, the more I was praised by Astria and Oracle Prime, and the more often Elias would give me that chilling eye emoji. It felt like an acknowledgement, a nod from one puppet master to another, or perhaps from one puppet to another, both aware of the strings. One evening, Elias posted a long, intricate message in Tigriachima. It was not a question or an instruction, it was a manifesto. He spoke of the burden of foreknowledge, of the chains of the unchangeable, of the agony of perceived inevitability. My blood ran cold. These were my words, my experiences. He was describing my Chronos curse, but reframing it. Some of us, Elias wrote, are born with a heavier burden, a direct perception of the weaving, a glimpse behind the curtain. This is not a curse, but a sacred responsibility. For you, the architects, must guide those who are still blind, even as you yourself are guided by the weaving. He was talking about me. He knew, or he was so attuned to the weaving that he could predict my internal state with terrifying accuracy. The line between predestination and manipulation blurred into a horrifying smear. Was he merely observing my inevitable path, or was he actively orchestrating it, using my own curse against me? I tried to resist. I tried to close Discord, tried to turn off my computer, but my hand, as if on its own accord, would hover over the mouse, then click back to the application. My fingers would type a response, an affirmation, a question about how to best shoulder this responsibility. I was watching myself dig my own grave, and I knew the dimensions of the whole before I even broke ground. The climax came in a series of private messages from Elias. He initiated a direct chat with me. I knew he would. I knew the exact words he would type. You are special. Username, he began. You carry the weight of true sight. You feel the tug of the threads. Others only perceive the patterns, you feel the weaving itself. My heart pounded, a drumbeat against the inside of my ribs, a sound I knew would be there. You have struggled against the current, he continued, but the current is the river. To fight it is to drown. To embrace it is to flow. He was talking about Chronos. He was talking about my inability to change my future. We have prepared for you. Elias typed a final step, a true alignment, a great unveiling. He then sent coordinates, a physical location, not a secret bunker, not a hidden temple, just a large, nondescript industrial building on the outskirts of the city a few hours away. A date, a time. This is where the weaving reveals its true face. He wrote, this is where you fully become an architect. Your journey has led you here. You knew it would. That last sentence. You knew it would. It was a hammer blow to my already shattered sense of self. He was not just predicting my actions, he was acknowledging my foreknowledge, confirming my absolute powerlessness. He was not just a cult leader, he was an extension of Chronos, or perhaps Chronos itself, manifested through a human vessel. I tried to fight it. I tried to tell myself I would not go. I stared at the coordinates, willing myself to delete the message, to block Elias, to abandon the server. But my fingers, cold and numb, found my calendar application. I typed in the date, the time, the location. I booked the train tickets, knowing the exact departure and arrival times, knowing the seat number I would be assigned. I packed a small bag, knowing the contents of it. Every action was a pre-recorded segment, playing out before my horrified, yet utterly resigned inner eye. The day of the great unveiling arrived. I sat on the train, watching the landscape blur past, a silent movie I would already seen. The other passengers chatted, laughed, read books their lives unspooled in real time with the illusion of choice. Mine was a fixed reel, looping endlessly. I arrived at the industrial building. It was even more desolate than I would imagined. No signs, no markers. Just a single unmarked door. I knew I would push it open. I knew the creak it would make. I knew the sterile, echoing silence that would greet me inside. The room was vast, dimly lit. About 20 people were already there, seated on simple, folding chairs arranged in a semicircle. Astria, Oracle Prime, and other familiar usernames from the server. Their faces were serene, almost blank, their eyes fixed on a raised platform at the front of the room. And there, standing on the platform, was Elias. He was not what I expected. Not imposing, not overtly charismatic in person. He was a man of average height, with unremarkable features, dressed in simple, dark clothing. But his eyes held a depth of stillness that was profoundly unsettling. They seemed to hold all the secrets of the universe and reflect none of them. He looked at me as I walked in and offered a faint, almost imperceptible nod. A silent acknowledgement. You knew you would be here. I took my seat, the only empty chair remaining. The others did not react, did not turn their heads. They were like statues, waiting. Elias began to speak, his voice soft, yet resonating throughout the cavernous space. He did not speak of grand revelations or cosmic secrets. He spoke of acceptance, of the beauty in the inevitable, of the peace that came from shedding the illusion of control. He spoke of the final thread, the one that bound us all not to him, but to the weaving itself. And as he spoke, I felt it, a strange, cold calm spreading through me. The internal screaming quieted. The futile attempts at rebellion ceased. My mind, once a battleground of futile resistance, became still. I looked at the faces around me, Astria, Oracle Prime, the others. Their eyes were vacant, yet filled with profound, unshakable peace. It was a peace of surrender, the peace of knowing there was no fight left to fight, because there had never been a fight to begin with. I knew, in that moment, what I would see in the reflection of my own eyes. I knew the expression that would settle on my face. It would not be terror. It would not be despair. It would be that same serene, terrifying emptiness. The horror was not that I had been tricked or forced or brainwashed. The horror was that I had known this was my destiny all along and had been utterly powerless to change a single, solitary step of the path that led me here. Nyx had been a monster of the window, a threat I could perceive and fear. Kronos was the architect of my cage, the designer of my pre-recorded life. And the architect of Dawn, this cult, this great unveiling, was simply the final, inevitable piece of furniture in my cell. I knew I was here. I knew I would remain. And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that I would never again even attempt to think of a purple elephant. That thought, too, was now merely a memory of a pre-recorded, futile rebellion. The world had shrunk to the size of my apartment walls, and even those felt too thin. Nexus gone was months ago, but the memory was a fresh wound, festering and refusing to heal. I was Alex, and I was a ghost haunting my own life. Spectre had broken me, not with violence, but with the insidious poison of surveillance and the chilling promise that I was theirs. After I ran from that convention, I did not just change my routine, I obliterated my old life. New city, new job, new phone number, new everything. I scrubbed my online presence until I was little more than a digital whisper. No social media, no forums, no gaming. My old accounts, the one Spectre knew, were deleted or left to rot. I learned to cook, to read physical books, to find comfort in the silence that digital connectivity used to fill. But silence, it turned out, could be just as loud as a chorus of whispers. I still heard Spectre's chuckle in the rustling leaves outside my window, saw fleeting glimpses of a too tall shadow at the edge of my vision. Their words, "You are mine, Alex, you always have been," were etched into the back of my skull, a constant, low thrum of dread. I knew they were out there. I just did not know how or when they would resurface. Loneliness, though, is a predator just as relentless as a stalker. Weeks bled into months. The initial adrenaline-fueled paranoia began to dull, replaced by a deep, aching void. I missed connection, even the superficial kind. My new job was isolating, my new city a blur of unfamiliar faces. I found myself staring at my blank phone screen, a phantom limb aching for the touch of notification, a message, anything to remind me I was not utterly alone. One particularly bleak Tuesday evening, after a microwave dinner and another hour spent staring at the ceiling. I cracked. I was not going to rejoin social media, not in a million years. But maybe, just maybe, a small, anonymous forum. One dedicated to obscure indie games, the kind that flew under the radar. It felt safe. It felt like a tiny, cautious step back into the world, a world Spectre would not care about. I created a new throwaway email, a new username, something generic like Wanderer87, and dove in. The forum was quiet, a handful of regulars discussing patch notes and lore theories. It was mundane, it was boring, and it was exactly what I needed. For a few days, I just lurked, reading posts, feeling a tiny sliver of normalcy return. Then, a private message popped up. My heart leaped into my throat. I almost closed the browser, a cold wave of panic washing over me. But the username was echoey softsilence. Not Spectre. Not anything. Familiar. My paranoia was just that. Paranoia. Right? I clicked it. "Hey, Wanderer87," the message read. "Saw your post about the new Starlight Serenade build. You are right. The devs really dropped the ball on the physics engine. Totally breaks immersion." It was a perfectly normal message, a reply to a throwaway comment I would made about a game. I felt a blush of embarrassment at my overreaction. This was fine. This was normal. I replied, a hesitant "yeah, it is a shame." Had high hopes for that one. And so, a new online friendship began, or so I thought. Echoey softsilence was, in many ways, everything Spectre had once been attentive, insightful, and seemingly always available. They had an uncanny knack for understanding my unspoken thoughts, for articulating feelings I had not even consciously processed. We talked about games, movies, the crushing weight of modern life, and the quiet desperation of loneliness. They never asked for personal details, never pushed for a voice chat or a meeting. It was text-based, anonymous, and incredibly comforting. Rough day at work. Echoey softsilence would message, seemingly out of the blue. I would stare at the screen, a half-eaten sandwich forgotten in my hand. It had been a rough day. My boss had been particularly demanding, and a client had been a nightmare. I had not posted anything about it, had not even thought about it until that moment. "How did you know?" I would type back, trying to sound casual, but a familiar knot of unease was tightening in my stomach. "Just a hunch," they would reply. "Your posts have a different rhythm when you are stressed. A little more clipped, less descriptive. It is subtle." I would dismiss it, a keen observer. That is all. I was probably just projecting my fears onto a harmless stranger. Then, the hunches started to get more specific. "Thinking of skipping your usual coffee run this morning." Came a message one rainy Tuesday. I was literally standing by the door, hand on the knob, debating whether it was worth getting soaked for a lukewarm latte. I froze. "Yeah, actually." I typed, my fingers suddenly cold. "How?" "The weather forecast." Echoey softsilence replied quickly. "And you mentioned yesterday you were feeling a bit under the weather." Just put two and two together. It was plausible. Annoyingly plausible. But the way they phrased it, the exact timing, it felt less like a guess and more like a statement of fact. Like they were watching me. The unease began to curdle into something more sinister. I found myself looking out my window more often, checking the locks twice, even triple checking. I started to notice things a car parked down the street that seemed to linger a little too long, a fleeting shadow at the edge of my peripheral vision. But it was always nothing, just my paranoia. Specters, ghosts clinging to my mind. The messages from echoey soft continued, a constant digital presence. They were still friendly, still empathetic, but the predictions grew bolder, more intimate. Do not worry about that stain on your shirt. Alex, a message popped up one Saturday morning. I was sitting at my kitchen table, nursing a cup of tea, staring in annoyance at a small coffee stain on my favorite worn-out t-shirt. My name. They used my name. My blood ran cold. I had not used my real name anywhere on that forum. Not in my profile, not in my posts, not in any of our private messages. Wanderer87 was the only identity I had. How do you know my name? I typed, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped my phone. A beat of silence. Then, you mentioned it in passing once, a long time ago. Must have slipped your mind. A long time ago. We would only been chatting for a few weeks. And I was certain I had not. I was meticulously careful about my identity. This was different from Spectre's initial vague mentions of my work, schedule. This was a direct, undeniable breach. No, I did not. I shot back, my heart hammering against my ribs. Tell me how you know my name. Another pause. This one felt longer. Does it matter? Alex, we are friends. Just enjoy the connection. The dismissive tone, the casual use of my name, the way they sidestepped the question, it was a sickeningly familiar pattern. A memory flashed Spectre, their calm, modulated voice, deflecting my questions about how they knew my schedule. I blocked echoey soft. I deleted my forum account. I unplugged my router. My hands were clammy, a cold sweat prickling my skin. It was not paranoia. It was happening again. Spectre. It had to be Spectre. I spent the next few days in a state of heightened alert. I did not dare go online. I barely left my apartment, only venturing out for essentials, my head on a swivel, my eyes darting everywhere. Every shadow was a threat, every distant sound a warning. Then a new message, not on the forum, not on my phone. It appeared on my smart TV. I had been trying to distract myself, watching an old movie, when the screen flickered. The movie paused and a simple text box appeared. Stark white letters against the dark screen blocking me won't help. Alex. My breath caught in my throat. I scrambled for the remote, my fingers fumbling. I clicked every button, desperate to make it go away. The message remained, an unblinking digital eye. You are watching the Maltese Falcon. Good choice. Bogart's a classic. I unplugged the TV. The screen went black, but the image of those words, the casual knowing tone, was seared into my mind. They were not just online anymore. They were in my home. Panic set in. Real visceral terror. I felt like an insect under a microscope. I checked my laptop, my tablet. Nothing, but the TV how. I had not connected it to anything but my streaming service. It was not even linked to my phone. I tried to rationalize. Maybe my smart TV had some kind of vulnerability. Maybe someone had hacked into my Wi-Fi. But the specificity, the casual mention of the movie, it felt too personal, too targeted. I bought a new router, changed my Wi-Fi password to something impossibly complex. I unplugged every smart device in my apartment. My home became a fortress of analog. No more streaming, no more smart speakers, no more digital conveniences. Just me, my physical books, and the echoing silence. For a week, nothing. The silence was deafening, but it was also a balm. I started to breathe again. Maybe, just maybe, I had finally cut them off. Then, a note appeared on my kitchen counter. It was neatly folded, a small piece of paper. My heart started to pound before I even touched it. I lived alone. I had not had visitors. The windows were locked, the door bolted. I picked it up, my fingers trembling. The handwriting was elegant, almost artistic. You really should not leave your toast in the toaster for so long. Alex, it gets cold. My half-eaten toast, forgotten in the toaster slot, was indeed cold. I had made it that morning before showering and gotten distracted by a sudden wave of anxiety. I dropped the note as if it were a burning coal. They were not just in my digital life. They were in my apartment. I tore through my home, a wild animal cornered. I checked every closet, every crevice, under the bed, behind the shower curtain. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No sign of anyone. But the note was real. The cold toast was real. I called the police. I tried to explain. An online stalker, someone who knew my life, who was now leaving notes in my home. They listened patiently, took notes, but their eyes held that familiar skepticism. We will send an officer to check things out. Sir, but without any physical evidence of a break-in, it is difficult. The officer came, walked through my apartment, nodded, and left. He suggested I might be overly stressed. I felt a scream building in my chest. They did not believe me. No one would. The messages, or rather, the manifestations of messages, began to escalate. My laptop, which I kept unplugged and stored in a drawer, suddenly turned on one night. The screen glowed with a single message: you are not sleeping well. Alex, I can tell. Your eyes are tired. I slammed it shut, disconnecting the battery with trembling hands. The next morning, I found a sticky note on my fridge. It was a cartoon drawing of a sad face, and underneath, in the same elegant handwriting as before, do not forget your vitamins. I had forgotten my vitamins that morning. I had been too terrified to think about them. My life became a constant waking nightmare. I could not eat, could not sleep. Every shadow was a potential hiding place. Every creak of the floorboards a sign of their presence. I started talking to myself, arguing with an invisible tormentor. What do you want? I would whisper into the empty air, my voice hoarse. Why are you doing this? A few days later, I found a small, meticulously folded paper airplane on my pillow. Unfolding it, I saw a single word written inside proximity. Proximity, that word. Spectre had used it at NexusCon. I have carefully crafted our friendship to achieve proximity. It was them. It had always been them. Echoey Softsilence was just another mask. The full horror of it washed over me, a tidal wave of despair. They had not just found me again, they had been with me all along. They had been in my home, watching me, listening to me, manipulating me, ever since I dared to reach out for human connection again. My carefully constructed new life was just another stage for their twisted play. I started seeing them. Not clearly, not a full figure. Just glimpses. A flash of unnerving green eyes and a reflection of my darkened window. The gaunt, pale-faced specter had revealed at NexusCon, superimposed for a split second onto a stranger's face on the street. The chilling chorus of whispers. You are mine. Alex was not just in my head anymore. It felt like it was coming from the very air around me, from the walls, from the floorboards. One evening, I was sitting in my living room, lights off, trying to disappear into the darkness, when my phone, which I had kept powered off and hidden in a drawer, suddenly vibrated. I almost jumped out of my skin. I stared at the drawer, my breath hitched. The vibration came again, and again, a steady, insistent thrum. Hesitantly, I pulled out the phone. The screen was on. It showed a single new message, not from a number, not from an app, just a blank screen with text. You are going to make yourself sick. Alex, you have not eaten properly in days. I know what you like. There's a new Italian place opening up on Elm Street tomorrow. You should try the lasagna. It is exactly what you need. Elm Street was 3 blocks from my apartment. The Italian place was not open yet. I had not even known it existed. This was not just observation. This was prescience. How could they know what restaurant was opening, what I needed? It was like they were not just watching my present, but predicting my future. Or, worse, writing it. The next morning, I found a neatly printed menu for the new Italian place. Mama Rosa's slipped under my door. The lasagna was circled in red. I did not go. I could not. The idea of walking into a place they had chosen for me, knowing they would be watching, was unbearable. But the messages did not stop. They adapted. You did not go to Mama Rosa's. Alex, that is okay. I understand you are feeling a little overwhelmed, but you need to eat. There is a frozen pizza in your freezer, the pepperoni one. You always like that one. I checked the freezer. There was indeed a pepperoni pizza. I had not bought it. I had not bought any groceries in days. It was not just my home anymore. It was my mind, my choices, my very existence. Spectre was not just watching, they were orchestrating. I started receiving instructions. Gentle at first, disguised as suggestions. You should really go for a walk today. Alex, the fresh air would do you good. Try the park, path by the river. It is beautiful this time of year. I resisted. I stayed indoors, shivering under a blanket. Then, the messages became more insistent. My smartwatch, which I had also unplugged and put away, started vibrating on my wrist. I had not even worn it in weeks. The screen, dark for so long, flickered to life, displaying a single line of text: go for a walk. Alex, now, the park path. Do not make me come get you. The last part, do not make me come get you, sent a jolt of pure terror through me. The casual threat, the implication of physical presence. I walked the path by the river, my heart thumping, every rustle of leaves sending shivers down my spine. I felt like a puppet on a string, forced to dance the Spectre's tune. When I returned, exhausted and trembling, another message awaited me. This time, it was projected onto my living room wall, a faint, ghostly image of text. Good boy. Alex. See, it was not so bad. You just need a little guidance. The control was absolute. I was no longer Alex, the man who made his own choices. I was Alex, Spectre's possession. My life was no longer my own. Every meal, every walk, every thought, every breath felt dictated. The insidious part was that sometimes the suggestions were things I genuinely needed. The fresh air did make me feel a tiny bit better. Eating the pizza, even though I knew it was placed there by them, kept me from starving. They were not just tormenting me, they were managing me. Like a pet or a project. My escape from Nexuscon had only delayed the inevitable. My attempts to disappear had only made me a more intriguing target. Spectre had not just wanted proximity, they wanted ownership. And they had achieved it. I stopped fighting. What was the point? They were everywhere. They saw everything. They knew everything, even before it happened. My will had been eroded, my spirit broken. I was a shell, waiting for the next instruction. One morning, I woke to a new message on my bedroom ceiling, projected from an unseen source. Good morning, Alex. Today, we are going to start fresh. I have laid out your clothes for you. The blue shirt. It suits you. I looked at the foot of my bed. There, neatly folded, were the blue shirt, a pair of jeans, and fresh socks. Clothes I had not touched in weeks. I got up. I dressed. I walked into the kitchen, where a cup of coffee sat steaming on the counter, just the way I liked it. And next to it, a small, square piece of paper. It was a picture, a photograph, a selfie taken just moments before. It was me, asleep in my bed, looking utterly defeated. And underneath, in that familiar, elegant handwriting, was a final message, a whisper made tangible, a promise of eternal surveillance and control. You are mine, Alex. You always have been, and now you always will be. Welcome home. My world did not end with a bang, but with a whisper projected onto my living room wall, you are not alone. It was not a voice I heard, not with my ears, but something that settled in the space behind my eyes, a thought that was not mine, illuminated on the pale drywall, like a phantom subtitle. The air conditioner hummed. The streetlights outside cast long, weak shadows through blinds, and the only other sound was the frantic thump of my own heart against my ribs. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, and the words were gone. Just a blank wall, reflecting the dim glow of my laptop screen. I laughed, a short, nervous bark that sounded alien in the quiet apartment. Stress. I told myself. Lack of sleep. Too much news. Too much scrolling. Too much everything. I would have been laid off 6 months ago. My job as a graphic designer evaporating into the ether of corporate restructuring. Since then, my days have blurred into an endless cycle of job applications, rejection emails, and the ever-present hum of digital noise. My social life, already thin, had withered completely. My only companions were the glowing screens that offered a distorted reflection of human connection. That whisper, that phantom projection, felt like a symptom of my increasing isolation. I was alone, terribly, utterly alone. And the thought, you are not alone, while meant to be comforting, had a predatory edge to it, like something was watching, waiting. I tried to shake it off, to chalk it up to a vivid hallucination brought on by caffeine and existential dread. But the seed had been planted. A tiny, unsettling curiosity. What if I was not alone? What if there was something more? It was in this vulnerable, hyper-aware state that I stumbled upon the echo chamber. I would have been diving deep into one of my obscure interests, the forgotten history of peculiar local architecture, specifically the strange, almost alien design in an old, abandoned observatory on the outskirts of town. Most people thought it was just a failed science project from the 70s, but there were whispers online in the darker corners of forums about its true purpose, its connection to something older, something other. One night, following a breadcrumb trail of cryptic posts and defunct websites, I found a link to a Discord server. The invite message was simple, seeking those who hear the whispers. The truth resides in the echo chamber. My blood ran cold. Whispers, just like the one on my wall. Coincidence, or something more. My rational mind screamed caution, but the part of me that felt a terrifying kinship with those projected words, the part that craved connection, clicked the link. The server was, at first glance, like any other niche community. Channels dedicated to ancient civilizations, suppressed technologies, esoteric lore, the great beyond. The members had names like Shadow Seeker, Void Walker, Truth Weaver. I chose Alex, a feeble attempt at normalcy in a place that clearly was not. The first few days were exhilarating. I lurked. I read. I absorbed. These were not your typical conspiracy theorists shouting about flat Earth or lizard people. Their discussions were nuanced, surprisingly intelligent, and steeped in a deep, almost academic knowledge of history, mythology, and fringe science. They spoke of patterns, of hidden currents beneath the surface of reality, of a grand tapestry woven by unseen hands. And then there was Luminary. Luminary was the server owner, the central figure around whom all discussions revolved. He rarely spoke in the general channels, preferring to observe, but when he did, his words were like perfectly cut diamonds, sharp, insightful, and brilliant. He possessed an uncanny ability to synthesize disparate pieces of information, to connect dots that no one else saw. His posts were not just informative, they felt revelatory. Like he was not just sharing knowledge, but unveiling it. He communicated mostly through private messages or in exclusive, small group voice chats he called conclaves of understanding. I was invited to my first conclave a week after joining, after Luminary noticed a few of my tentative posts about the observatory. Alex, his message read, "Your insights into the old watcher's design are most perceptive. You have a keen eye for the veiled truth. Join us tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a deeper discussion." My heart hammered. I felt a thrill I had not experienced in years. This was not just validation, it felt like an invitation into something profound. The conclave was a revelation. Luminary's voice was calm, resonant, almost hypnotic. He spoke of the observatory not as a failed project, but as a monument to a forgotten science, a listening post for frequencies beyond human perception. He wove together ancient myths, quantum physics, and architectural symbolism with effortless grace. He did not just present theories, he presented a worldview, a paradigm shift. The world you perceive, he explained, his voice a soothing balm, is but a single note in a symphony. Most are deaf to the other melodies, the dissonances, the harmonies that shape our existence. We, in the echo chamber, seek to attune ourselves to the full orchestra. I was captivated. He spoke directly to the yearning in my soul, the sense that there was more to life than the mundane, the feeling of being an outsider looking in. He made me feel seen, understood, special. Over the next few weeks, the echo chamber became my world. My days started and ended with checking the server, participating in discussions, and eagerly awaiting Luminary's next pronouncement. I made friend Shadow Seeker, a quiet woman who seemed to know everything about ancient languages, Void Walker, a former astrophysicist who now believed in interdimensional travel, Truth Weaver, a history buff who shared my obsession with forgotten lore. We bonded over shared truths and collective disdain for the unenlightened masses outside our digital sanctuary. My real life, already crumbling, continued its descent. Job applications became a chore. Calls from my worried sister went unanswered. My apartment grew messier, my meals more erratic. But I did not care. I had purpose now. I was part of something bigger. I was waking up. Luminary introduced daily meditations. These were not traditional meditations, they were specific times, usually late at night, when we were all encouraged to be online in a designated voice channel, simply listening. Luminary would play a low, pulsating drone, sometimes overlaid with distorted whispers or faint, unidentifiable sounds. He called it attuning to the resonance. We were to close our eyes, clear our minds, and listen for the truth beyond the static. At first, I heard nothing but the drone and the occasional creak of my old apartment building. But after a few sessions, something shifted. During one meditation, as the drone swelled, I started to feel a pressure behind my eyes, a faint vibration in my teeth. Then, for a fleeting moment, I heard it again, a whisper, not quite words, but a sensation of language just at the edge of comprehension. It was like the world itself was trying to speak to me, and Luminary was teaching me how to listen. The whispers, the phantom words on my wall, they were not hallucinations. I realized they were real, and Luminary knew how to interpret them. Then came the truth-seeking missions. These were online scavenger hunts, but with a twist. Luminary would post cryptic clues, ancient riddles, obscure historical references, coordinates that seemed nonsensical. Our task was to decipher them, to find the hidden information, to piece together the larger narrative. Sometimes, the clues led to real-world locations, an old library with a specific forgotten tome, a forgotten landmark with a peculiar inscription, a deserted park bench under a specific tree. I never went to these physical locations myself, not at first. I was too comfortable in my digital cocoon, but other members did. Void Walker posted photos of himself at a crumbling mausoleum, deciphering Latin inscriptions. Shadow Seeker shared images of old maps she would found in a university archive. It all felt like a grand, shared adventure. Luminary also started encouraging personal affirmations. These were private messages, sometimes voice calls, where members were asked to share their deepest fears, their vulnerabilities, their regrets, to truly embrace the truth. Luminary explained, "You must first shed the weight of your perceived weaknesses. The echo chamber is a safe space for purification." I hesitated at first. Sharing my layoff, my loneliness, my self-doubt felt too raw. But the other members were doing it, sharing their struggles in the private channels, and Luminary responded with such empathy, such profound understanding, that I felt compelled to follow suit. I poured out my heart to him in a series of long, rambling messages. He listened, he understood, he offered guidance. He told me my weaknesses were merely unattuned strengths, waiting to be channeled. He told me my loneliness was a sign of my unique perception, that I was simply too awake for the slumbering world. He knew me. He truly knew me, more than my own family. The great disconnect followed naturally. Luminary began to subtly, then overtly, suggest that our old connections were holding us back. Those who cling to the old paradigms, he wrote in a general announcement, will only drag you back into the darkness. The path to true enlightenment requires shedding dead weight. You cannot carry the blind into the light. I started ignoring my sister's calls entirely. My last remaining friend, an old college buddy, stopped inviting me out after I repeatedly flaked, preferring to spend my evenings in the echo chamber. I told myself they just did not understand. They were not awake. They were part of the static. My health deteriorated. I barely ate, barely slept. My eyes were constantly bloodshot. My muscles ached from sitting for hours on end. But my mind felt sharper, more alive than ever. I was seeing patterns everywhere in the news, in the mundane chatter of online forums, even in the arrangement of objects in my own apartment. Everything was connected. Everything was a clue. Luminary had opened my eyes. Then Whisperwind disappeared. Whisperwind was one of the most active members, a bright, inquisitive presence who often challenged Luminary with thoughtful questions. She was always the first to solve a riddle in a truth-seeking mission, always eager to share her discoveries. One day, her post stopped. Her status remained offline. A few days later, someone in the general chat asked about her. Luminary responded with a calm, almost serene message. Whisperwind has found her truth. Her journey led her beyond the echo chamber. We wish her well on her new path. It felt off, terribly off. Whisperwind was not the type to just leave without a word. She was too invested. But the other members seemed to accept it without question. A true seeker. Void Walker posted, "We all hope to reach that clarity." I tried to voice my concern in a private message to Shadow Seeker, but she simply replied, "Luminary knows best." Alex, her path was her own. A chill snaked its way down my spine. The first crack in the perfect facade of the echo chamber. I started to pull back. Just a little. I skipped a few daily meditations. I did not participate as actively in the truth-seeking missions. The thought of Whisperwind, gone without a trace, haunted me. The messages started. First, from other members. "We have missed you in the conclaves." "Alex, everything all right?" Then, from Luminary himself. "Alex, your light seems to be dimming. Are you struggling to maintain your attunement? Perhaps a private session would clarify things." I ignored them. I tried to focus on the real world, on finding a job, on reconnecting with my sister. But it was like trying to swim against a powerful current. My real life felt dull, muted, insignificant compared to the vibrant, urgent reality of the echo chamber. One afternoon, there was a knock on my door. I rarely got visitors. Peeking through the peephole, I saw a woman I did not recognize, holding a small, intricately carved wooden box. She smiled, a wide, unsettling grin. "Alex," she asked, her voice muffled but clear. "I am Truth Weaver. Luminary sent me. He is concerned about your attunement. He thought you might appreciate this." She held up the box. It was carved with symbols I recognized from the echo chamber's lore, symbols of awakening and truth. My heart pounded. How did she know where I lived? I had not shared my address with anyone on the server. I certainly had not shared it with Luminary. I am fine. I stammered through the closed door. I am just busy right now. Her smile did not falter. We understand. The outside world can be distracting, but the truth waits for no one. Luminary hopes to see you back in the conclave soon. We all do. She placed a box on my welcome mat. Consider this a reminder of your path. She turned and walked away, her footsteps eerily silent on the concrete hallway. I waited until I heard the faint ding of the elevator, then slowly opened the door. The wooden box sat there, innocuous yet terrifying. I did not pick it up. I just stared at it, my mind racing. They knew where I lived. They were watching me. Paranoia set in. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking presence. Every unfamiliar car parked on my street felt like it was watching my apartment. The whispers returned, not on my wall this time, but in the corners of my hearing, just out of reach, like someone was constantly murmuring my name. I tried to delete my Discord account, to sever all ties. But when I clicked the delete account button, an error message popped up: account deletion temporarily unavailable. Please contact administrator. I tried to message Luminary to demand my account be deleted, but my messages would not go through. User not accepting messages at this time. I was trapped. The server, once a sanctuary, now felt like a cage. The messages from other members, once friendly, now felt like probes checking my status, reminding me of my obligations. Luminary's public announcements grew more intense, more demanding. He spoke of a grand revelation that was approaching, a confluence of energies that would transform those truly attuned. All members were expected to attend, to be fully present. The date for the confluence was set for a week away. I knew, with a sickening certainty, that I had to escape before then. But how? They knew where I lived. They had my information. I was starting to suspect they had more than just my digital footprint. My personal affirmations, my vulnerabilities, they were now weapons. I packed a small bag, grabbed my car keys, and started towards the door. Then my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Alex. Luminary's voice, calm and melodic, filled my ear. It was not the voice chat version. It was his actual voice, chillingly clear. Where are you going? I froze. My apartment was on the 3rd floor. He could not see me. Unless, how do you know that? I whispered, my voice trembling. We are all connected. Alex, he said, a hint of amusement in his tone. Especially those who have attuned themselves so deeply to the resonance. Did you truly believe you could simply disconnect? I want out, I said, try to sound firm, but my voice cracked. Out, he chuckled. There is no out from truth, only deeper understanding. You have come too far. Alex, you have seen too much, and we have invested too much in your awakening. What do you want? Your full presence at the confluence, he replied, his voice hardening slightly. Your unwavering commitment, your contribution. I am not doing anything, I said, trying to muster defiance. Oh, but you will, he said, and for the first time. I heard a genuine chill in his voice. Because if you do not well, the outside world can be a very dangerous place for those who have glimpsed the truth and then try to deny it. Old watchers. Alex, they do not like to be ignored. And the whispers, they can turn very loud. Very painful. He hung up. I stood there, phone still pressed to my ear, heart pounding like a drum against my ribs. The window in my living room. Had he seen me through that? Or was it something else? Something more insidious? I did not leave. I could not. I was paralyzed by fear. The days leading up to the confluence were a blur of terror and forced compliance. I logged back into the echo chamber, posted a few meek messages, tried to blend in. The other members seemed to accept my return without question, but their messages felt subtly different. their smiles and their profile pictures a little too wide. Like they all knew, the night of the grand revelation, the confluence, arrived with a heavy, suffocating dread. My apartment felt colder than usual, despite the heat being on full blast. My computer hummed, its screen a portal to my impending doom. Luminary had instructed everyone to join a specific voice and video channel. Cameras on, full presence, no exceptions. I joined, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped my mouse. The channel was already packed. Hundreds of faces stared back at me from the grid of video feeds. Some looked excited, some serene, some almost vacant. There was Shadow Seeker, Void Walker, Truth Weaver, all of them. And in the center, a single dominant feed luminary. He looked different. His face was gaunt, his eyes sunken, yet they burned with an intense, almost supernatural light. He was not smiling. He looked consumed. Welcome, my attuned, he began, his voice resonating through my speakers, deeper and more powerful than I remembered. Tonight, the veil thins. Tonight, we transcend. For too long, humanity has slumbered, oblivious to the true architects of our reality, the true source of all knowledge, all power. He paused, letting his words hang in the air. I could see the other members staring intently, hanging on his every word. Some had closed their eyes, their faces rapt. We have spoken of the whispers. Luminary continued, of the resonance, of the old watchers. Tonight, you will not just hear them. You will feel them. You will become them. My stomach lurched. This was not about enlightenment. This was something else. Something dark. He began to speak in a language I did not recognize, a series of guttural clicks, hisses, and long, drawn-out vowels. It was not human. As he spoke, the drone from the daily meditations began to play, low and insistent, building in intensity. Then, things started to happen on the screens. One by one, the faces in the grid began to contort. Not in pain, but in something far more disturbing. Their eyes widened, becoming glassy, unfocused. Their mouths opened and silent, stretching yawns. Their skin seemed to ripple, their features blurring, as if they were melting. I stared, horrified. Shadow Seeker's face, once kind, now looked like a distorted mask, her eyes black pits. Void Walker's features elongated, his head tilting at an unnatural angle. Truth Weaver's skin took on a strange, almost chitinous sheen. The whispers of my own had returned, louder this time, forming into words, clear and distinct. Join us. Become. We are the echo. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. This was a ritual, a transformation, and I was next. Luminary's voice, still speaking the alien tongue, seemed to be coming from everywhere, not just my speakers. The drone filled my apartment, vibrating through floor, through my chair, through my very bones. My vision blurred. The grid of melting faces pulsed with a sickening light. My own reflection stared back at me from the corner of the screen, my face pale, eyes wide with terror. I could feel the pressure behind my eyes again, the vibration in my teeth. The whispers were screaming now, demanding, insistent. No, I yelled, my voice a raw croak. I lunged for my mouse, desperate to close the tab, to shut it all down, but my hand trembled uncontrollably. The cursor danced wildly across the screen. Luminary's eyes, on his feed, seemed to lock onto mine. He stopped his chanting. A slow, chilling smile spread across his gaunt face. You feel it. Alex, he whispered, his voice now a low hiss that seemed to emanate directly from my own mind. The call of the true reality. Resist, not embrace your destiny. The drone intensified, reaching a deafening crescendo. My computer screen flickered wildly, the faces on the grid merging into a single monstrous, undulating mass. The words on my living room wall returned, not projected, but etched into the drywall, glowing faintly. You are not alone. And then I felt it, a presence, not just in my mind, but in my room. A cold, heavy weight settling behind me, pressing down on my shoulders. I could not turn around. I was frozen, my eyes fixed on the horrifying spectacle on my screen. The air grew impossibly cold, and I could smell something ancient, something metallic and damp, like old blood and ozone. The whispers were no longer just words. They were sensations. Hands, cold and skeletal, seemed to be reaching for me from the screen, from the darkness behind me, trying to pull me in. With a primal scream, a last desperate surge of adrenaline, I slammed my fist down onto my keyboard. The screen went black. The drone cut out. The presence behind me vanished, leaving only a lingering chill and the phantom scent of decay. I sat there, gasping, shaking, tears streaming down my face. My apartment was silent again, save for my ragged breathing. The words on the wall were gone. The computer screen was dark. It was over, but it was not. I scrambled away from my desk, backing against a far wall, my eyes darting around the room. Nothing, just the familiar, mundane clutter of my apartment. But the silence now felt wrong. It was too deep, too absolute. I grabbed my phone, fumbled for my sister's number. My fingers were clumsy, numb. I needed to call someone. Anyone. I needed to tell someone what I would seen, what I would felt. As I brought the phone to my ear, I noticed something on the screen. A new notification. From Discord. My heart seized. I had not opened the app. I had not done anything. It was a private message. From Luminary. My hands trembled so violently I almost dropped the phone. I clicked it open. The message was brief. Just 2 words. Welcome home. And underneath, a small, looping video clip. It was a grainy, distorted image from my own apartment. My living room. My desk. And a faint, almost transparent figure standing right behind my chair, directly where I had felt the presence. It was tall, slender, with too many joints, its head tilted, its face obscured, its hand reaching out toward the back of my head. The video looped. The figure reached. And then a whisper, clear as day, not in my mind, but from the phone speaker, chilling me to the bone. You are not alone. I dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, the whisper echoing from its broken speaker. I stared at the dark screen, at the faint reflection of my own terrified face. I was alone in my apartment, but I knew, with a certainty that clawed at my sanity, that I was not. They were here. They had always been here. The echo chamber was not just online. It was everywhere, and it had finally found its way home. My new normal had already been shattered once, leaving me a trembling shell in a darkened apartment, convinced every shadow held the glint of a camera lens. Nyx had taken my peace, my sense of security, the very air I breathed without suspicion. But Kronos did not just take my future. Kronos took me. The revelation had hit me like a physical blow, a cold, gut-wrenching certainty that stole the breath from my lungs. Kronos was not watching me, they were perceiving me. My entire life, laid out like a finished painting, every brushstroke, every color, every detail past, present, and future already set. And now, that perception was inside my head. It was not a voice, not exactly. It was not a whispered command or a booming pronouncement. It was far more insidious, far more terrifying. It was the absence of surprise. The certainty of my own actions before I even consciously formed a thought. I remember the first morning after the confrontation. I woke up, the dread of heavy blanket suffocating me. My eyes flew open, and before I could even process the sunlight trying to peek through the blackout curtains, I knew what I was going to do. I was going to get out of bed, shuffle to the kitchen, and make myself a cup of Earl Grey. I knew it, not because I would plan it, but because the knowledge was simply there, a precognition of my own imminent existence. I tried to fight it. I lay there rigid, clenching my fists. No, I thought, I won't make Earl Grey. I will make coffee. Or maybe just water. I will do something different. But even as the thought formed, I felt a strange, cold certainty, a knowing that transcended my own will. I would make Earl Grey. I had to. It was already decided. My body moved, not exactly against my will, but as if following a script I had not been privy to, a script that Kronos already had memorized. My hand reached for the tea bags, not the coffee grounds. The kettle boiled. The familiar scent of bergamot filled the air, and with every action, a wave of existential nausea washed over me. This was my life now, a pre-recorded tape, playing out in real time, with me as the unwilling, unwitting star. Nyx had been a threat from the outside, a predator lurking in the shadows. I could flee from Nyx. I could hide. I could delete accounts, change my name, my city. I could fight, but Kronos was inside. There was no escape, no hiding, no fighting. The days blurred into a monotonous procession of predetermined moments. I would try to choose my outfit, and before my hand even reached for a shirt, I would know which one I was going to pick. The blue one. Always the blue one that day. I would try to read a book, and every sentence, every plot twist felt stale and predigested, not because I would read it before, but because Kronos had already perceived me reading it. The joy of discovery, the thrill of the unknown, had been utterly annihilated. It was not that Kronos told me what was going to happen. It was more profound, more terrifying than that. It was the absolute undeniable certainty that my own future actions, my own thoughts, were already part of a fixed, unchangeable sequence. It was like I was living in a perpetual state of deja vu, except the view was always just milliseconds ahead of the deja. I tried to explain it to myself, to rationalize this horror. Maybe I was just stressed. Maybe the trauma of Nyx had finally broken my mind. But the clarity of the precognition was too precise, too chillingly accurate. I would think about picking up my phone, and before my fingers even twitched, I would know exactly which app I was going to open, what I was going to type, and even the exact response I would receive. It was like being given the answer key to a test you had not even started, and being forced to fill in the blanks, pretending you were solving it yourself. The most agonizing part was the illusion of choice. I still felt like I was making decisions. I still had the sensation of agency, but it was a hollow, empty feeling. It was a sensation of a puppet's strings being pulled, while the puppet itself believes it is dancing freely. I would reach for a glass of water, feeling the thirst, feeling the desire to quench it. But Kronos already knew I would reach for that glass, already knew the water would feel cold against my lips, already knew the exact moment I would set it back down. Every micro-decision, every fleeting impulse, every deep-seated yearning, all perceived, all known, all part of the eternal tapestry. My apartment, once a sanctuary against Nyx, became a prison. The blackout curtains that were meant to keep out prying eyes now felt like they were keeping me in, trapping me with the omnipresent, omniscient Kronos. I stopped venturing out much. What was the point? Every conversation I had, every interaction, was already pre-scripted. I tried talking to a grocery store clerk once, just to feel a shred of normal human connection. I thought I was going to ask about a specific brand of cereal. But then, a moment before the words left my lips, I knew I would ask about the weather instead. And I did. The clerk gave a standard, polite response. And I felt a cold, dead certainty that Kronos had perceived that entire interaction. From my internal struggle to the clerk's canned reply, long before I even stepped foot in the store. The loneliness became a crushing weight, heavier than anything Nyx had inflicted. Nyx had isolated me from others. Kronos had isolated me from myself. My thoughts, my feelings, my very identity, they were not truly mine anymore. They were just data points in Kronos' infinite perception. I tried to rebel. Oh, how I tried. I would sit on my couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to conjure a truly random thought. A purple elephant tap, dancing on a cloud. A spontaneous urge to paint my entire apartment neon green. Something utterly, completely unpredictable. But even those attempts, those desperate flailings for autonomy, felt perceived. I would think of the purple elephant, and a split second later, I would have a chilling realization that Kronos had already perceived me thinking of the purple elephant. My rebellion was just another thread in the tapestry, already woven. This was not just knowing my future, it was knowing my entire existence as a fixed, unchanging entity. The past was not a memory. I was recalling it was a perceived event that Kronos had always known, just as the future was a perceived event that Kronos had always known. There was no before or after for Kronos, only the eternal is. My life was a static image, viewed from outside time, and I was trapped within that image, forced to play out my part. Sleep offered no respite. My dreams, once a chaotic landscape of subconscious fears and desires, now felt like meticulously crafted narratives. I would wake up with a distinct impression that Kronos had perceived the dream, every twist and turn, every fleeting image, before I even closed my eyes. It was like being forced to watch a movie of my own psyche, a movie that Kronos had already reviewed. I started to understand Kronos' nature a little more, or at least my interpretation of it. They were not malevolent in the traditional sense, not like Nyx. Nyx wanted to harm me, to control me physically. Kronos did not want anything. Kronos simply was an eternal observer, drawn to my loneliness, my vulnerability, not to exploit it, but to perceive it. My yearning for connection, my desperate need to be seen, had inadvertently drawn an entity that saw everything, but offered no true connection in return. It was the ultimate cosmic irony. I wanted to be known, and now I was known so completely, so utterly, that there was nothing left of me that was not already perceived. The term free will as an illusion became less an abstract philosophical concept and more a suffocating, visceral reality. Every decision, every choice, every moment of hesitation was just me playing out a pre-written script. If I decided to turn left, it was not a choice, it was simply the path I was perceived to take. If I decided to turn right, it was the same. The feeling of choice was just a mechanism, a necessary part of the play to make it feel real to the puppet. I wonder what Kronos gained from this. Were they simply a cosmic archivist, collecting human experiences? Was my suffering just another data point in their infinite database? Or was there a deeper, more chilling purpose? The thought that my loneliness had somehow attracted them, like a beacon in the vast emptiness of time, was almost unbearable. They were not a predator, they were a mirror, reflecting my deepest fears back at me, magnified 1,000-fold. The fear of being truly alone, and the fear of being known too well. I tried to write, to document this horror, to put it into words, hoping that the act of creation, of putting something new into the world, might be a way to reclaim some semblance of self. I sat down at my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I thought about describing the cold dread, the sensation of my thoughts not being my own. But then, the familiar certainty washed over me. I knew what I was going to type before my fingers even moved. I knew the exact phrasing, the specific words, the precise emotional tone. It was all laid out, already written, already perceived. The act of writing became a mechanical transcription of something that already existed, rather than a spontaneous act of creation. The words flowed, but they felt hollow, ghost-like. They were not my words, not truly. They were the words Kronos had always perceived me writing. The horror intensified when I realized the implications of Kronos' complete perception. If my entire life was a tapestry, then every single thread, every single knot, every single loose end was already woven. This meant that every mistake I would ever make, every regret, every sorrow, every moment of pain, they were not just possibilities, they were inevitabilities. I was not hurtling towards an unknown future. I was simply playing out a predetermined one, with no power to avert the impending tragedies or even savor the fleeting joys. because even those joys were part of the script. There was a day not long ago when I decided I could not bear it anymore. The constant, suffocating awareness of Kronos, the feeling of being a ghost in my own body, was too much. I stood by the open window, looking down at the street below. The wind was cold against my face. I closed my eyes, picturing the fall, the sudden impact, the finality, and then the certainty. I knew I would not do it. Not because I chose not to, but because Kronos had already perceived me not doing it. The act of even contemplating it was just another scene in the predetermined play. The despair was absolute. Even death, even the ultimate act of defiance, was an illusion of choice. Kronos did not intervene, did not stop me. They did not need to. They simply knew what I would do, or rather, what I would not do. And that knowledge was enough to render any attempt at agency utterly meaningless. It was far more cruel than any physical restraint. It was the absolute, total nullification of free will, leaving me to merely observe my own existence unfold, a passive passenger in my own life. I sometimes wonder about Nyx, that predatory stranger who watched me, who carved replicas of my avatar. In a perverse way, Nyx's physical threat feels almost quaint now. At least with Nyx, there was a tangible danger, a real enemy I could potentially fight or escape from. Kronos is not an enemy. Kronos is an inescapable, eternal condition of my existence. Nyx took my peace, Kronos took my very being. My world has shrunk to the confines of this apartment, and even that is a misnomer. My world is the confines of my own mind, which is no longer truly my own. I exist in a perpetual state of existential horror, a puppet in a predetermined play, always aware of the eternal observer who knows my every move, every thought. And that is the final, chilling realization. Kronos is not just perceiving my life. Kronos perceives everything, the entire tapestry of existence. Every interaction, every word spoken, every thought. Even yours. My peace was shattered not by Nyx, an external threat, but by Kronos, who took me completely. My entire life, past, present, and future, became a pre-recorded tape playing in my head. Every action, every thought, even futile attempt at rebellion, like thinking of a purple elephant, were known before I made them, stripping away all surprise and choice. This was not surveillance, it was perception, an inescapable internal torture. During this soul-crushing apathy, I knew I would stumble upon the architects of Dawn Discord server. Its philosophy of the great weaving that all reality is a predetermined tapestry mirrored my suffering perfectly. My foreknowledge, my curse, was seen as a gift there, making me a prodigy in their pattern recognition exercises. Their leader, Elias, seemed to understand my unique burden, reframing it as a sacred responsibility. I fell deeper, contributing financially, watching my savings dwindle, powerless to stop myself. My real life frayed as I embraced their truths. The great unveiling was an inevitable climax. I knew I would go to the industrial building, knew the faces, knew Elias's words. As he spoke of acceptance and surrender, my internal screaming quieted. The horror was not being tricked, but realizing that the tape was not just playing in my head, but was being watched. And not just by me. The air in the cavernous industrial building was thick with the scent of dust and something metallic, like old machinery. Fluorescent lights, flickering erratically in the high ceiling, cast long, dancing shadows that made the assembled faces seem to shift and distort. There were maybe 50 of us, a mix of ages, but mostly young, drawn together by a shared, unspoken hunger for meaning, or perhaps just a shared, unspoken dread. We sat on folding chairs, arranged in neat rows facing a makeshift stage, just a raised wooden platform with a single podium. I knew this room. I knew the nervous cough from the woman 2 rows ahead, the faint hum of the ancient HVAC unit, the way the light caught the dust motes swirling in the air. I knew the weight of the cheap plastic chair beneath me, the faint tremor in my own hands. I knew it all because I had already lived it countless times, in the relentless loop of my mind. Elias walked onto stage. He was exactly as I had pictured him from his profile picture and voice calls: tall, slender, with intelligent, kind eyes that seemed to hold an ancient weariness. His voice, when he spoke, was a smooth, resonant baritone, amplified just enough to fill the space without sounding artificial. "Welcome, architects," he began, his gaze sweeping over us, lingering for a fraction of a second on each face. When his eyes met mine, it was not a glance, it was a connection, a knowing. I had felt it countless times through the screen, but here in person, it was almost physical, like a gentle pressure against my forehead. He spoke of the great weaving of reality as a tapestry, intricate and complete from beginning to end. He spoke of Kronos, not as a destroyer, but as the ultimate artist, the one who had laid out every thread, every knot, every faded hue and vibrant splash of color. He spoke of the illusion of choice, the comforting lie we tell ourselves to navigate the predetermined path. And he spoke of the gift, the ability to perceive the pattern, to see the threads, to accept the inevitability. Many of you have felt it. Elias said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, yet still perfectly audible. That terrible, beautiful clarity. The moment you realize that your life is not a journey of discovery, but a playback, a pre-recorded tape. Every triumph, every heartbreak, every fleeting thought already etched into the fabric of time. A shiver ran through the room, a collective sigh of recognition. He was describing my torment, my curse, but he made it sound like salvation. He was describing my gift. And in that realization, he continued, comes the ultimate freedom. The freedom from the struggle. The freedom from the burden of choice. The freedom to simply be, to witness the unfolding of what was always destined to be. My internal screaming, usually a cacophony of protest and despair, was indeed quiet. It was not gone, it was just muted, drowned out by the hypnotic rhythm of Elias's words, by the shared, silent understanding in the room. This was the acceptance he spoke of, surrender. And the horror was not being tricked, was not having my worst fears confirmed. The horror was realizing that I was right, that it was all true, and that Elias, in his perfect understanding, was not just a fellow traveler, but something more. He paused, letting the silence settle, letting his words sink into our very bones. Then he smiled. It was not a wide, jovial smile, but a gentle, knowing curve of the lips that held a hint of melancholy. Some of you, he said, his gaze once again sweeping the room, have come to us with profound, almost terrifying clarity. You have seen the tape play out not just in vague premonitions, but in vivid, undeniable detail. You have experienced what we call hyper-pattern recognition. You are the prodigies of the weaving. My breath hitched. He was talking about me. He had always made me feel seen, even through a screen. His private messages have been uncannily insightful, responding to my most desperate, unarticulated thoughts with a wisdom that felt ancient and profound. He was the only one who truly understood the agony of knowing, the weight of a life already lived. You, young architect, Elias said, his eyes locking onto mine again. This time, the connection was more intense, a probing sensation that felt like a physical touch. You, who try to rebel by thinking of a purple elephant during your most despairing moments. You, who saw your savings dwindle, powerless to stop the inevitable contributions to our collective understanding. You, who even now are trying to reconcile the profound relief of acceptance with the lingering, futile flicker of an imagined free will. The air left my lungs in a silent gasp. The purple elephant. It was a secret, a private act of defiance against the crushing determinism. An absurd, random image I would conjure in the darkest corners of my mind, precisely because I believed no one could ever know it. And yet, Elias had just spoken aloud, casually, as if remarking on the weather. A cold dread, far more potent than the familiar apathy, began to snake its way through my veins. This was not just understanding, this was knowing. And it was not for my Discord messages. I had never mentioned the purple elephant. Never. A tremor started in my hands. then spread to my chest. My heart would have been so quiet, so resigned, suddenly pounded against my ribs. Elias's smile widened, just a fraction, as if he sensed my internal earthquake. Yes, he murmured, his voice still calm, still soothing, but now laced with subtle, unnerving edge. The purple elephant. A charming little detail. Would not you agree? A testament to the exquisite precision of the weaving. Even the most seemingly random, rebellious thought is but another thread, perfectly placed. He took a step from behind the podium, moving closer to the edge of the stage. His eyes never left mine. The rest of the room seemed to fade into a blur. I could hear nothing but the frantic drumming of my own blood. You see, Elias continued, his voice dropping slightly, becoming more intimate, as if he was speaking only to me, even though everyone in the room was listening raptly. Your journey to us, your discovery of the architects of dawn, was as predetermined as the sunrise. Every click of your mouse, every word you typed, every late night spent scrolling through our archives, all laid out. And your unique burden, your hyper pattern recognition, it made you particularly susceptible to our truths. It made you perfect for us. He tilted his head, a gesture I recognized from our video calls. Do you remember, young architect, that moment you first felt the full weight of Chronos? That moment your life became a tape. You were sitting at your desk, the old wooden one your grandfather left you, the one with the faint coffee stain in the shape of a crescent moon near the right corner. My breath hitched again. The desk, the coffee stain. How could he possibly know that? I had never mentioned my grandfather, never posted pictures of my room. My online presence was carefully curated, anonymous enough to feel safe. You were wearing that faded blue hoodie. Elias went on, his voice a silken thread, weaving itself into the very fabric of my memory. The one with the drawstring missing from the left side. And you were staring out your window at the old oak tree in your backyard, wishing, just for a moment, that you could climb it again like you did when you were a child, before the world became so predictable. Panic, cold and sharp, pierced through the numb apathy. This was not just pattern recognition. This was impossible. This was a direct, unfiltered glimpse into my most private moments, moments I had not even consciously recalled until he spoke them. How do you know that? I managed to croak, the words barely audible even to myself. My chair scraped as I leaned forward, my hands gripping my knees. All eyes in the room turned to me, a ripple of murmurs starting to spread. Elias held up a hand, silencing the murmurs instantly. His gaze, however, remained fixed on me, unwavering. Because, young architect, he said, his voice now a low rumble, the weaving is not something abstract. It is lived. It is experienced. And some of us are given the sacred responsibility to witness it, to perceive it, not just in our own lives, but in the lives of others. He stepped off the stage, walking slowly down the aisle, his eyes still locked on mine. The other architects parted, creating a path for him. He moved with a quiet grace, his footsteps barely audible on the concrete floor. He was coming for me. I knew it. I had known it all along, had not I? But the knowing had not prevented the terror. You see, he continued, now just a few feet away, his voice barely above a whisper, yet it filled my entire world. Your perception of the tape, your unique gift, was a pathway, a doorway. It allowed me to see what you saw, to experience your existence from a perspective that was frighteningly close. He stopped directly in front of me, bending slightly so his eyes were level with mine. His breath, clean and faintly minty, ghosted across my face. Frighteningly close, he repeated, a hint of something like amusement in his eyes. You thought our connection was purely digital. Did not you? That was just another voice on a Discord server, miles away. A leader, a mentor, a friend. He chuckled softly, a sound that sent a fresh wave of ice through my chest. Oh, I was all of those things. But I was also much, much more. I was your neighbor, young architect, your literal physical neighbor. My blood ran cold. My mind raced, trying to process this impossible revelation. My neighbor. My house was a modest suburban home with a small yard. There were other houses, of course, but the house with the overgrown rose bushes. Elias applied, his voice like a gentle knife twisting in my gut. 2 doors down from yours. The one with the perpetually closed blinds. Yes, that one. I moved in about 6 months ago, right around the time you first started experiencing the full clarity of Kronos' embrace. My jaw hung open. The house. I had barely noticed it. A quiet, unassuming place. Sometimes I would see a light on in the evening, but never anyone coming or going. I would just assume it was an elderly couple or maybe a reclusive artist. Never Elias. Never him. And why the closed blinds? I whispered, my voice hoarse, barely a croak. He smiled, a chillingly benign expression. To better observe, of course. To watch the tape play out from an unobstructed vantage point. I saw you wake up each morning, saw you eat your cereal, saw you stare blankly at your computer screen, your eyes filled with that beautiful, terrible resignation. He reached out a hand, and for a terrifying second, I thought he would touch my face. But his hand stopped just inches from my cheek, hovering. I saw you struggle with your finances, saw your savings dwindle, just as you knew they would. I saw you pace your living room late at night, wrestling with the meaninglessness of it all. I saw you, young architect, in your most vulnerable moments, your most private moments. I saw the purple elephant. The purple elephant. It was a joke, a desperate attempt to prove I had some control, some privacy. But he had seen it. He had not just known it through some abstract pattern recognition. He had seen it. You were never alone, young architect. Elias said, his eyes gleaming with an unsettling intensity. Not truly. Not since Kronos first revealed the weaving to you. I was always there, a silent observer, a fellow traveler on the predetermined path, guiding you gently to where you were always destined to be. He straightened up, his hand dropping back to his side. The other architects were staring, their faces a mixture of awe and confusion. They did not understand. They could not. This was my personal horror, unveiled for me alone. The Architects of Dawn. Elias announced, his voice regaining its oratorical power, is not just a community. It is a conduit, a place where those who perceive the weaving can come together not to fight it, but to embrace it, to become one with it, and through our collective acceptance, to allow the weaving to truly unfold. He turned slowly and walked back to the stage, leaving me trembling in my seat. My mind was a whirlwind of terror and sickening realization. The pre-recorded tape was not just my perception, it was his. He had been watching my life, my every move, my every thought, as if it were a movie playing on a screen. And he had not just watched, he had orchestrated. He had been the one to create the Discord server, to lure me in, to guide me, knowing every step I would take, because he had already seen me take them. My entire life, the one I believed was just a playback in my own head, was actually a performance for him. A private screening. Elias was back on the stage, his gaze sweeping over the room once more. And now, he said, his voice resonating with finality that chilled me to the bone, the great unveiling truly begins. It is time, architects, to fully surrender, to allow the weaving to absorb us, to become the threads ourselves, to be woven into the fabric of all that is and all that ever will be. He raised his hands, palms outward, as if offering himself, or inviting us in. A low hum started to fill the room, not from the HVAC, but from everywhere and nowhere. The flickering lights intensified, then dimmed, then pulsed with soft, ethereal glow. The faces of the other architects seemed to soften, their eyes glazing over, a look of profound peace settling on their features. They were accepting. They were surrendering. They were becoming part of the weaving. I knew what was coming. I had seen it. I had lived it. The absorption, the dissolution of self into the grand, predetermined tapestry. I knew I would close my eyes, and when I opened them again, I would be part of the pattern, a conscious thread in an infinite design, forever aware of my own non-agency, forever playing out the pre-recorded tape of eternity. My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against a rising hum. My hands clenched into fists, futilely grasping at a choice that did not exist. I tried to scream, to rebel, to conjure another purple elephant. Anything to prove I was still me, still independent. But no sound came out, no thought formed. Because I knew I would not scream. I knew I would not resist. I knew I would simply close my eyes, just as I was doing now, in this very moment. I knew I would accept. I knew I would surrender. The horror was not just realizing that my life was a pre-recorded tape. It was realizing that the tape was being played by a smiling, benevolent neighbor who had watched every single frame, every single secret, and had orchestrated my path to this very moment. And now, he was inviting me to become part of his eternal playback, not as a viewer, but as a living, conscious, inescapable part of the tape itself. The last thing I saw before the light consumed me was Elias's face, still smiling, his eyes fixed on mine, as if he was watching the final, perfect scene of his favorite show. And in that moment, I realized the ultimate horror. I was not just a character in a story, I was a tape, and he was a one pressing play, over and over again, for all eternity. Thanks for being here with us on Daily Story. Love, heartbreak, secrets, it is all just one swipe away. Subscribe and join us for the next unforgettable chapter.